Hello, everyone, and welcome to the budget breakdown with Dan Allman, who is the owner of Resolute U. Dan, we've just had everything's on the news about the budget, and Jim Chalmers actually calls this the most ambitious budget in decades. So, what we'd actually love from you is your take on it, your spin on what the budget says against our reality. So, what's your thoughts?
Morning, Becca Jane. Um, it's very, very good spin. And let's face it, politicians are really, really good at trying to spin their narrative. And you'll see that he will not get off that talking point for months, trying to tell you that it's the biggest reform we've had in decades. When I've looked at the budget and I've said, okay, how can I speak to people about what he's trying to get out there? I've gone down a little bit of a different path. Is yes, I'm going to explain what the budget is doing, but more importantly, what I want to do then is explain the budget against your lived reality. Because when I speak to my clients and we're chatting about cost of living pressures going up, it's always above. Well, they say inflation's this, but why do I walk out of a grocery store spending $150 that I can pack into two two paper bags? And then I go on my old man rant about how cranky I get when that happens. So what I wanted to be able to do for today is to explain, well, this is what they're saying, which is okay, it's what they're saying, but this is now what your lived reality is. And that's what we're going to discuss today.
Yeah, good one. And do you know what? I actually struggle because there's always going to be something in the world at the moment. Like, it feels like just yesterday that it was the war in Ukraine that caused all of this. And then it's the war in Iran, and then it's this and it's that. But how really does what's happening in the world affect the budget and where we are now?
Yeah, good question, Becca Jane. It impact, even though we're an island in the middle of nowhere, we're impacted by what happens in the world economy every single day. When Russia invaded Ukraine in 2022, we saw a spike in oil because we knew Russia being a large oil producer, there was going to be sanctions come on, so oil prices rose. And along with the high demand and low supply that we had coming out of COVID, that started to help boost our inflation. And we all saw what happened in 23 and 24 with inflation and then the rate rises. So, yes, the war in Ukraine impacts, the war in Iran impacts, and there's nothing that we can do about that except say, well, okay, if that's what's happening, how do I survive it? And how do I move forward? And that's the biggest thing that we've got to look at is, well, I can't, whatever that orange Muppet does, I can't do anything about. All I can do is, well, okay, when I look at me and my family and us, well, how do I get through it? What
Mm.
tools and strategies do I need to actually get through to this? Because you can't worry about things you can't change.
So you're actually speaking my language, and I love that. So I hope that we do cover what is in our control and how we can and how we can deal with it, because I think that's when we talk so much about what's happening overseas or what's happening here and all the stuff, it's like it feels overwhelming. Specific, like, well, for me it does. So I love that you're going to bring it back into what you can control. So going back to our budget.
Yep.
Let's go. So let's talk to me about what they're giving us and what's actually the reality that most Australians will see.
Beautiful, Becca Jane. I'm going to share my screen so we can bring up the presentation because that's what everyone loves is a PowerPoint presentation. And they're telling you lies if they don't. Okay. So budget 2026-27. So that's looking forward to next financial year. What it gives you, what inflation takes away, and what the housing story actually means. Because ultimately this budget has been framed around we're going to solve the housing issue. We're going to make changes to capital gains tax. We're going to make changes to tax deductibility. And by making those changes, it's going to increase affordability for first home buyers. we actually went down this path in the Hawke Keating um,
Era.
era, thank you, and in the Hawke Keating era, and um, it didn't work.
Right.
Within 12 months, they had to unwind it, and they'd blamed the CGT tax that they brought in 1985. Guess who started high school? Um, and by 19, and then they implemented it in 86, 87, and 12 months later they stopped it, right? That was the political spin. So what we're going to do today is get rid of that and give people the facts on what's happening, what's influencing, and by making any of these changes, will it actually do anything? So let's have a look. Budget relief. What the budget gives you. We're getting tax cuts, which is awesome. Starts 1 July. We're getting 1 July 27, we're getting more tax cuts. We're getting a initial $1,000 instant work deduction. So that means you don't need to claim, you don't need to have any receipts. You can just put on your tax return that I had $1,000 worth of work expenses. And if you're on the 30 cents in the dollar tax bracket, you'll get a $300 tax return. Okay? This is this is This is a good one because usually to get a tax deduction, you actually have to spend the money.
Yeah,
So
right.
they're just saying, well, you know what, you tell us you've done it and we'll just give you the tax deduction, right? So in an investment property, for example, if the rent you receive is lower than all of your outgoings, as of, for existing home investment property owners, you're able to offset that loss against your taxable income. But you've had to first spend that money before you get the tax deduction, right? So if your investment property costs you $10,000 to hold, you actually spend $10,000. That's money out of your pocket that you have to spend. And then you get a tax deduction at the end of the year. So if you're in the 30-cent tax bracket, you've spent $10,000 to get $3,000 return. And what we're hoping for is the capital growth in our properties will augment and offset the actual cash flow loss that we've had. This one, they're just going to say, put it on your tax return and we're going to give it to you. In 27, 28, the $250 WATO offset comes in. That's going to help. So for the average earner on the average taxpayer, what they're going to get is they're going to get 2 grand, 26, 27, and just under 3 grand of tax relief in 27, 28. Cost of relief and policies that they've done. This is important. Fuel tax, fuel excise cut. You can see there 52 cents down to 26 cents. That's going to expire in October, September, October. Well, if it's 3 months, then put it in, it'll expire at the end of this month, but they may kick it on. So what we're seeing is we had that big price shock in our fuel prices. The government said, oh shit, we've got to do something. We'll halve fuel excise. So we automatically saw a reduction in fuel prices, right? Once that relief runs out, our fuel prices increase by about 32 cents a litre, and that's coming. We're getting cheaper medicines, which is great. So all of our the vast majority of our medicines are subsidized by the government. And I think if you don't have a healthcare card, you pay about $30 a prescription, irrespective of what the actual medicines really cost. The government's putting in an infrastructure fund to help building. This isn't to build new houses. This infrastructure fund is to say, okay, we'll help with the sewage works, the roads, all of those costs that property developers have to spend. Well, we're going to help subsidize that so we can make housing a little bit more affordable and we can bring housing on quicker. Negative gearing reforms, the new build. If you have an investment property now, sweet. And the only way you're going to get a tax deduction moving forward is if you buy brand new property. We're going to talk about that further in our presentation. Um, and what they're hoping over the next 10 years is that we'll have 75,000 more owner-occupiers come in by the changes they've made to the gearing and the CGT implications that they're bringing in.
Okay.
So that's that one. Right, let's have a look at the next one. This is our lived reality, people. This slide here is our absolute this bloody bar down here, Becca's doing my head in, is the absolute impact of what we've lived. Okay? Our headline CPI is now 4.6%. Your housing costs have risen 6.5%. Electricity has risen 25%.
Mm.
Remember when he said he was going to reduce your electricity bill by $250? How's that working out for us? Fuel. We understand why fuel's gone up. Okay, we had that price shock from when Iran was invaded, and we're still seeing that flow through now. Wages have actually only gone up 3.3%. So when you take off your what wages went up to what inflation is, we're actually going backwards 1.3%. And what that means is what $100 was worth at the end of 2025, it's only worth 98.70. So you're losing purchasing parity. When you sit down and you have a look at the next category, I broke it down to so for households or for people who earn 75 grand and for people who earn 120 grand. You have tax credits that are coming in of 1,800 to $2,000 for the 75 people and just over 3,300 for the 120,000. But our actual costs of what that is significantly more than what we're going to get back. So you're going to feel richer but be poorer. And I know that sounds stupid, but you're going to feel richer because the government's going to give you a little bit more money. But inflation's taking that away, so you're actually poorer. So this budget's actually not making is helping a little bit, but the way that the government helps is by reducing their spending
Mm.
to stop inflation because it's rising. These are real numbers from the ABS. This is what the Reserve Bank looked at in the early this month and went, we're raising interest rates. Reckon they're going to do that again in June. So if we're looking at for people to go, okay, but I'm living this reality, what can I do? Make sure your capital allocation is really strong. We're moving into a period of where we're going to go into a whole heap of this is what I need, but this is what I want. And you're going to have this friction in your budget and your capital allocation. And for us to get through this, what has to happen is my needs need to come first. And I may have to defer my wants into the future because it's putting too much stress on my budget. So having a really strong capital structure in place is going to help with what we're living with now. Does that make sense?
No, it does. It makes perfect sense. And for those of you that aren't aware of your capital allocation or your budget, we've got some free things like that on the website. So under our free resources. So I'll put that link um, just below in the video description.
Awesome. Awesome.